I found out my husband had a secret love child, and now his ex wants me to take care of their kid so she can move in with her new partner, who turns out to be my ex. My name is Emily, 33F, and I've been married to Tom, 35M, for 7 years. We've had what I thought was a relatively normal marriage. We have our ups and downs like everyone else, but we always seem to get through things together. I considered us a solid team, one that could weather any storm. That is, until last month, when everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my husband came crashing down around me. It started on a quiet Sunday morning. I was drinking coffee on our back porch, scrolling through my emails, when I noticed a message in my spam folder with the subject line, "About your husband." Normally, I'd ignore messages like that, but something compelled me to open it. The email was from a woman named Rachel, claiming to be the mother of my husband's child. At first, I laughed. It had to be a scam, right? Some strange coincidence or a phishing attempt. But as I read on, the contents of the email turned my stomach. She included a photo of a little boy named Leo, a bright-eyed toddler with a striking resemblance to my husband. My hands started to shake as I stared at the picture. Rachel explained that she and Tom had a brief relationship about 4 years ago, during a period when we briefly separated. She went on to say that Tom knew about Leo, but they had agreed to keep things quiet. According to her, they hadn't wanted to complicate our marriage any further by involving me in the situation. I felt a hot rush of betrayal and anger. How could he have kept something like this from me? I sat there, stunned, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. The man I trusted with my heart had a secret child, a child I knew nothing about. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The walls of my world felt like they were closing in, suffocating me. When Tom returned from his morning jog, I confronted him immediately. He looked at me, his face turning pale as I held up my phone with the email on the screen. I demanded an explanation, and for a moment, he just stood there, staring at me like a deer caught in headlights. Then he sighed, sat down, and admitted everything. He told me about Rachel, about their fling, and about Leo. He said he hadn't told me because he was afraid of how I'd react, that he didn't want to lose me. But that wasn't enough. I couldn't believe he kept this from me for years. I demanded to know what else he was hiding, what other secrets he'd been harboring. He insisted that was it, that he'd told me everything. But the damage was done. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and devastated all at once. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. Over the next few days, I barely spoke to Tom. I was trying to process everything, to figure out what this meant for our marriage. How could I move forward with someone who had hidden something so monumental from me? And what did this mean for our future? I'd always wanted kids, but finding out that my husband already had a child he kept secret, made me question everything. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, Rachel contacted me again. She wanted to meet in person to discuss our options moving forward. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I felt like I needed answers, closure, or at least a better understanding of the situation. But I had no idea just how much my world was about to be turned upside down yet again. I agreed to meet Rachel at a quiet cafe in town. I arrived early, feeling a nervous, churning knot in my stomach. I'd been rehearsing what I'd say to her, how I'd confront her about this mess she brought into my life. When she finally walked in, I immediately recognized her from the photo she'd sent. She looked tired, but she had a certain confidence about her, like she knew she held all the cards. I steeled myself, determined not to let her see how rattled I felt. Rachel sat down across from me and offered a forced smile. "Thank you for meeting me, Emily," she said. "I know this must be hard for you, but I thought it was time we had a real conversation." I nodded, barely able to speak through the anger building up inside me. Hard for me? That's an understatement. Why now, Rachel? Why, after all these years, are you telling me this? She sighed, stirring her coffee absently. It's not that simple. You think I wanted to disrupt your life? I thought I could handle it on my own, but I can't. Leo deserves to know his father, and he deserves to know the truth about you too. I frowned, caught off guard. The truth about me? She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. I know about your affair, Emily. I know you had a fling when you and Tom were separated. He might not have told you, but he came to me, heartbroken, and that's when well, you know. The blood drained from my face. I couldn't believe she knew about that, and I couldn't believe Tom had confided in her of all people. That's none of your business, I spat. Besides, that was years ago, and we moved past it. It doesn't change what you two did. Rachel shrugged, clearly unfazed. Look, I don't care about your little indiscretions. I care about my son. And the truth is, I'm ready to move on with my life. I found someone new, someone who loves me and wants to build a family with me. But here's the thing, Leo has grown attached to Tom. He asks about his dad constantly. And my new partner, he isn't interested in raising another man's child. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. So what, you want to just drop him on us? You think I'm going to raise your child with my husband after everything you two did behind my back? Rachel took a sip of her coffee, looking disturbingly calm. You might not have a choice. Tom wants to be in Leo's life, and you've always wanted kids, haven't you? This might be your only chance to have a family. Her words were cruel, and the insinuation stung. She was toying with me, trying to paint herself as some magnanimous mother while making me feel like I'd somehow failed. But there was something more, a strange sense of control she seemed to have over this situation. I felt myself bristling with anger, my hands trembling as I tried to keep my voice steady. You don't get to decide what I do, I replied, barely keeping my composure. This is my life, my marriage. You think you can just waltz in here and force me to play mom to your child? Rachel raised an eyebrow, unfazed by my outburst. I'm not forcing anything, but you need to understand the position you're in, Emily. If you don't cooperate, I can make things very uncomfortable for you. I scoffed, crossing my arms defensively. How exactly? You've already wrecked my marriage. What more could you possibly do? She leaned in, her voice lowering to a whisper. You see, Tom's been honest with me about your little affair, but I doubt you've told your family or friends. Imagine if they found out too. I have messages, proof, things you probably wouldn't want circulating. My heart pounded as I realized the depth of her manipulation. She was threatening to expose my past, to rip open old wounds I'd buried. I felt sick, like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Rachel wasn't just here to talk about Leo. She was here to hold my secrets over my head, to blackmail me into submission. Why would you do this? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. What kind of person uses a child as a bargaining chip? She shrugged again, almost nonchalant. I'm just a mother trying to do what's best for her son. You want to keep your perfect life? Fine, but it comes with strings attached, Emily. I'm sure you'll come to see things my way. I felt like I was drowning, like every breath I took was filled with desperation. Rachel stood up, smoothing her skirt as if this conversation had been nothing more than a routine negotiation. Think it over, she said, tossing some money on the table. I'll be in touch. And remember, if you decide to fight this, well, secrets have a way of coming to light. She walked out, leaving me sitting there, stunned, angry, and completely alone. I knew I had to tell Tom, but I also knew that Rachel had set a trap, one that would force me to make impossible choices. I had to decide whether to stand up to her and risk my own secrets being exposed or to let her dictate the terms of my marriage, my family, and my future. As I left the cafe, I felt the weight of her threats pressing down on me. I'd always considered myself a strong person, but now I wasn't so sure. Rachel had me cornered, and I didn't know if I had the strength to fight my way out. I drove home in a daze, Rachel's words echoing in my mind. She'd come in like a wrecking ball, tearing apart any semblance of control I thought I had left. I'd been betrayed once by Tom, but now Rachel was holding my past over my head like a sword. I was terrified, yet part of me felt a twisted sense of determination rising from within. If I was going to face this, I needed to do it on my own terms. When I got home, Tom was waiting, lounging on the couch with a beer in hand. He looked up, a slight frown crossing his face as he took in my disheveled appearance. You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, taking another sip, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I stood in the doorway, my fists clenched, trying to decide if I should confront him right then and there. But I needed answers before I tore into him. I forced myself to play it cool, nodding as I set my purse down. Just a rough day at work, I lied, plastering on a fake smile. I need a shower. I'll be down in a bit. Once I was upstairs, I locked the bathroom door and sat on the edge of the tub, my heart pounding. If Rachel was going to use my past against me, I needed leverage of my own. Something told me that Tom had more skeletons in his closet than he let on, and I was determined to find them. That night, while Tom slept, I crept downstairs to his office. He'd always kept his personal laptop locked, but I remembered enough from watching him over the years to guess the password. It only took 3 tries before I was in. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I scrolled through his emails, looking for anything that might shed light on what he'd been hiding from me. It didn't take long to find something suspicious. There were dozens of emails from an account I didn't recognize, one he seemed to correspond with frequently. The messages were vague but hinted at meetings, secret trips, and cryptic discussions about arrangements. My stomach twisted as I clicked on a particularly recent email, hoping it would provide the answers I was looking for. The email was from Rachel. It was dated just a few weeks before our latest anniversary, and it was filled with discussions about how they were going to break the news to me about Leo. My blood ran cold as I read through their exchanges, realizing that they'd been planning this for months. Tom had been in on it the whole time. They were both plotting to bring Leo into our lives to make me a part of this twisted family drama. But that wasn't all. In another email, Rachel had mentioned needing money to cover some legal issues, and Tom had replied, assuring her that he'd taken care of it. I quickly opened our joint bank account on the computer, my heart racing as I saw recent large withdrawals. Thousands of dollars had been siphoned out over the past several months, all going to a separate account. My inheritance. He'd been using my money to fund his life with Rachel and their child behind my back. I wanted to scream, to storm upstairs and confront him, but I forced myself to keep calm. I needed to gather more evidence, something undeniable. I took screenshots of the emails, the bank records, and sent them to myself. I would need these for the next step. The next morning, I confronted Tom. I didn't tell him about Rachel's threats or the emails. Instead, I demanded to know why he'd been taking money out of our account. He fumbled, his face flushing as he stammered out weak excuses, saying he'd needed it to pay off some debts that he'd meant to tell me, but hadn't wanted to worry me. "Don't lie to me, Tom," I said, my voice icy. "I know about Rachel. I know about Leo. I know everything." His face went pale, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off, letting my anger boil over. "You've been stealing from me to support your little secret family, and now you expect me to take care of your son. To let you and that woman dictate the terms of my life? You're disgusting." He raised his hands, trying to placate me, but I was done listening to his excuses. "Emily, please just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I snapped. "You betrayed me, you used me, and now you think you can blackmail me into raising your child." His expression hardened, a flicker of anger crossing his face. "Blackmail? Rachel told me about your affair, Emily. You don't get to play the victim here. You've lied to me too." I felt a surge of rage, knowing he was trying to turn this back on me, to make me feel guilty for something that had happened years ago. That was a mistake, and I owned up to it. "You, on the other hand, have been sneaking around, draining my inheritance, planning to bring your son into our lives like it's a favor. Don't act like we're on the same level." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "I did what I had to do for Leo. You're just bitter because you'll never have a family of your own." His words hit me like a slap, and I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. I wanted to hit him, to scream at him, but I refused to let him see me break. Instead, I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We're done, Tom. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking back every penny you stole from me. You're going to pay for this." He laughed, a cold, mocking sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Good luck, Emily. You think you're going to waltz into court and play the victim? I'll make sure everyone knows about your little affair. You'll be lucky if you walk away with anything." I stood my ground, refusing to let him intimidate me. "Do what you want, Tom, but know this, I'm not going to let you win. You think you're untouchable, but you've underestimated me." He glared at me, and for a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. But then he turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I felt a surge of relief, knowing I'd finally stood up to him, but I also knew that the battle was far from over. Tom wasn't going to let me walk away easily, and I had to be prepared for whatever he threw at me next. As I sat down, my mind racing, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I'd made my decision. I was going to fight no matter what it took. Rachel had tried to control me, and Tom had tried to manipulate me, but I was done being their pawn. It was time to take back my life, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. After Tom stormed out, I wasted no time. I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa, who was known for her tenacity in court. I explained the situation in as much detail as I could, laying out everything: the affair, the secret withdrawals from our joint account, the inheritance theft, and Rachel's threat to reveal my past if I pursued legal action. Lisa listened patiently, her calm professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos I felt inside. "Well, Emily," she said, her voice steady, "you're in a delicate situation. Rachel's threat could be problematic, but we have leverage here. Tom's use of your inheritance without your consent constitutes financial fraud. If we can prove that, it'll strengthen your case significantly." Her confidence was reassuring, but the weight of the situation bore down on me. I'd never expected my marriage to end in a courtroom, let alone with accusations flying from both sides. But I wasn't going to let Tom walk away unscathed, especially not after the betrayal he'd thrown at me. I agreed to proceed, knowing that this fight was about more than just money. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self. Over the next few days, Lisa and I gathered evidence. I provided the emails, bank statements, and the documentation of every unauthorized transfer Tom had made. I could feel Tom's presence looming over me at home, his angry silence filling the air like a storm waiting to erupt. But I stayed focused, determined to see this through. Then, one night, I received a text from Rachel. "We need to talk, face to face. I know you're planning to sue Tom, and I can make it worth your while to reconsider." I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me not to trust her, but a twisted part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, to see if she could somehow justify her actions. I agreed, and we arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown, a neutral ground where I could feel a semblance of safety. Rachel was already seated when I arrived, her gaze piercing as I walked up to the table. She looked different, worn, almost desperate, her confident demeanor cracked. I sat across from her, keeping my expression cold and unreadable. "Why did you want to meet?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. She took a deep breath, tapping her fingers on the table. "I know you're planning to take Tom to court, but you don't understand what you're getting into. Tom and I, we have plans, and you're interfering." I raised an eyebrow, my anger simmering just below the surface. "Interfering? You're the one who's been siphoning money from me, who's threatened me to cover your own tracks. And now you want me to back off? Give me one good reason." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "You think this is about money? Tom and I have been building something, and we're not going to let you tear it down. But I know you're not just after revenge. You want to be free from this mess, to move on with your life." I didn't respond, letting her continue, curious to see what angle she was trying to play. "If you drop the lawsuit," she said, her voice low, "I'll pay you back. Every penny he took, I'll make sure it's returned. You'll get your inheritance, and you can walk away from this cleanly. No mess, no dragging your name through the mud in court." I let out a bitter laugh, crossing my arms. "You really think I'd take that deal? That I'd trust you to pay me back after everything you've done?" She looked at me with something almost resembling pity. "I don't expect you to trust me, but consider the alternative. If you go to court, I'll reveal everything about your past. I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. Tom might go down, but you'll go down with him. Do you really want that?" Her threat hung in the air, chilling me to my core. She was ruthless, willing to use any means necessary to protect herself. But I wasn't going to let her intimidate me. I'd come too far to back down now. "You can try, Rachel," I said, my voice steady. "You can smear my name, drag my past into this mess, but I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not walking away empty-handed." Her expression hardened, and for a moment I saw a flash of something dark in her eyes. "Then you've made your choice," she said coldly. "Don't say I didn't warn you." With that, she stood up and left, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked out of the cafe. I sat there, my mind racing, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I knew now, without a doubt, that Rachel and Tom would stop at nothing to protect themselves. But I also knew that I couldn't let them win. As I drove home, I thought about the threat Rachel had made, about the lengths she was willing to go to. I felt a surge of determination, knowing that I couldn't back down. I had to see this through, to make them pay for everything they'd done. But I also realized that I needed to be prepared for whatever they threw at me next. The next day, I met with Lisa and told her about Rachel's offer. She shook her head, a look of disgust crossing her face. "Typical manipulation tactic," she said. "Rachel's trying to rattle you, to make you doubt yourself. But we got enough to move forward, and with the evidence you gathered, we can put them on the defensive." We spent hours going over our strategy, planning for every possible scenario. I felt a strange sense of calm as we worked, as if I'd finally regained control over my life. But as I left Lisa's office, I received another message from Tom. "If you keep pushing this, you'll regret it. Rachel's not the only one who can dig up dirt on you." I ignored the message, refusing to let him see my fear. I knew now that I was in for a brutal fight, one that would test every ounce of strength I had left. But I was ready. I wasn't just fighting for my inheritance. I was fighting for my freedom, for my right to move on without them haunting my every step. I was running on pure adrenaline by the time the court date arrived. Over the last few weeks, I'd faced constant harassment from Tom and Rachel, both of them doing everything in their power to break me down. Tom had even sent emails detailing aspects of my past that he threatened to expose, hoping to scare me into submission. But I'd steeled myself for this, knowing that there was no turning back. When I walked into the courtroom, I was prepared for war. Lisa stood beside me, her presence a pillar of strength, and as we faced Tom and Rachel across the aisle, I realized that this was more than just a legal battle. This was about reclaiming my life from people who had manipulated, lied to, and stolen from me. The trial was brutal, as expected. Tom's lawyer tried to paint me as a vengeful wife out to destroy an innocent man's life. They dragged up every detail of my past, including things I'd long since left behind, trying to twist my history into a weapon against me. Rachel took the stand with feigned tears, playing the role of a devoted partner who had merely been trying to support Tom's children. The entire spectacle was sickening, but I held my ground, refusing to let their tactics get to me. Finally, it was my turn to speak. Lisa had advised me to be calm and clear, to let the evidence speak for itself. But as I stood on the stand, I felt a surge of emotions. I looked directly at Tom, meeting his gaze with a look of defiance. "I trusted my husband," I began, my voice steady but filled with anger. "And he betrayed that trust. He stole from me, from the life we built together, to support a secret family he hidden from me. And now he and his partner want to twist the truth, to make me out to be the villain. But the real villain is the man who lied to my face, who stole my inheritance to fund a life I never agreed to." I saw a flicker of anger in Tom's eyes, but I didn't stop. I went on to describe how I discovered the missing funds, how he'd manipulated me into ignoring the red flags, and how Rachel had threatened me to cover up their deceit. I laid out the financial records we'd uncovered, showing the steady siphoning of my inheritance over the years, all leading back to Tom's hidden expenses. As I finished, I turned my gaze to Rachel, who looked away, her expression tight. She knew as well as I did that the evidence was undeniable. She'd been complicit, aiding Tom in stealing from me, and now the truth was out in the open. When it was over, the judge delivered his verdict. Tom was found guilty of fraud and was ordered to repay the money he'd taken, along with punitive damages. Rachel, too, was implicated, facing charges for her role in the scheme. As the gavel came down, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had won. They couldn't control me anymore, couldn't manipulate me into silence. But the victory was bittersweet. Even as I walked out of the courtroom, free from their grasp, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost. I'd spent years in a marriage that had been nothing but a lie, invested my heart and soul into a man who had never truly valued me. The betrayal had left scars that wouldn't fade easily. But I knew that I had to move forward, to rebuild my life from the ashes of what they'd tried to destroy. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself, taking back control of my finances, my home, and my happiness. I surrounded myself with friends who reminded me of who I was before all of this, friends who believed in me when I hadn't believed in myself. I started therapy, a step toward healing from the trauma that Tom and Rachel had inflicted. Each day was a step forward, a reminder that I was stronger than they'd ever realized. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some old photos, I found a picture of Tom and me from our honeymoon. We were smiling, carefree, as if the future held nothing but promise. I stared at the photo for a long time, feeling a pang of sadness, but then I ripped it in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor. It was symbolic, a final act of letting go. I didn't need to hold on to the past any longer. I was free to create a future that was mine alone. Then, unexpectedly, I received a letter in the mail, a formal apology from Rachel. She wrote that she regretted everything, that she'd been caught up in Tom's lies, and that she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive her. I read the letter, feeling a strange sense of closure, but I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give so easily, not after everything they'd done. Instead, I took the letter and burned it, watching as the flames consumed the words, turning them to ash. It felt cathartic, a final act of release. I was done with them, with their lies, with their betrayals. I was ready to move on, to reclaim the life they'd tried to steal from me. As the months passed, I found a new sense of peace. I threw myself into my work, traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, and reconnected with the parts of myself I'd lost along the way. The scars remained, a reminder of what I'd endured, but they no longer held me back. I was free, finally free, and the future stretched out before me, filled with endless possibilities. In the end, Tom and Rachel were nothing more than a painful chapter in my past, a lesson in resilience and strength. I'd survived their betrayal, their manipulation, and I'd come out stronger, more determined than ever. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that I was ready for whatever came next, no longer weighed down by the darkness they'd tried to impose on my life.